You watching India Today. I'm Gaurav Sawant. The match is at a very fascinating stage. The match between New Zealand and England at this point of time. That match has gone into a super over. We'll talk about that in greater detail. We'll also talk about what's happening with Chandrayaan-2. Chandrayaan-2 all set for liftoff at this point of time. We'll tell you about that in greater detail. Well, 2 balls, 2 runs needed off the last ball. That's where the match is in the super over between England and New Zealand. 241. Both England and New Zealand were tied at 241. It's been a very fascinating game. Went into the super over. UK scored 15 in that super over. New Zealand needs 16. Now, that's that last ball. In that last ball, 2 runs are needed off that last ball. Very fascinating match that's currently on in the United Kingdom. What a final of the World Cup cricket between New Zealand and England. The last ball needs to be bowled. This has been one very fascinating match that's currently on in the United Kingdom. Archer bowling, what we also do at this point of time. So there's last minute field placement is happening. Last minute field changes are happening before this last ball is bowled. New Zealand need 2 runs from 1 ball.
Well, it's an epic day as far as cricket is concerned. You know, none of these teams, in fact, both of these teams have never won a World Cup. And, what a fascinating place. Lords, jam-packed. This is the last delivery that we have here. Jofra Archer, we thought that he could defend those 16 runs. And Martin Guptill has, I think they will go for 2. And it's
again tied up.
So England are through to the England have won their first ever World Cup title because they were ahead of New Zealand. They were the third best team in the league stage. So they have won their first ever World Cup title. You know, the scores were logged at 241 after both the teams had batted in the regulation time. 16 runs were what New Zealand needed, and by the points table, the leagues at the league stage, England were ahead of New Zealand. So by that, they have won their first ever World Cup title. You know, the 4th time. This is the 4th time that England made it to the final, and finally, 4th time they were lucky. And what a fascinating! This perhaps is the best ever World Cup final that we've seen in the history of cricket. An epic day for England, and look at the men who made it happen. Jofra Archer defending those 16 runs. Mind you, he has a Caribbean background, and Ben Stokes, he is a Kiwi, by the way.
Oh, absolutely, and what a fascinating finish. England win the World Cup 2019 at Lords. So England, the Lord of the Lords, Lords of the Lord. We have the results, and what a fascinating last ball victory for England. New Zealand was to score 16. They couldn't manage. They were out at 15. A run out.
Martin Guptill, and who knew this? You know, when that Jimmy Neesham struck that 6 of Jofra Archer, it seemed as if the momentum had shifted in favor of New Zealand, and what a performance by this English team. You know, they were being considered as one of the favorites alongside India and Australia. You know, they won against a team like India, but after that, they had a few hiccups, and to progress to the semi-finals, they needed some back-to-back victories. They won those 3 back-to-back matches, made it to the semi-finals, defeated defending champions Australia quite comprehensively, and what an epic final this was. I think the generations will remember this final. I've never ever we've seen such a close final. In fact,
the T20s went into a super over. India, Pakistan, that was very fascinating. Yes. India won that.
Yeah, but 50 over World Cup. Yes. In fact, 241 is, if I'm not wrong, was the target when in 1996 when Australia had lost to Sri Lanka in the final. After that, India chased down that score in 2011. Beyond that, I don't remember anybody, if anybody has chased down a target of beyond 240.
So this in the end was a battle of the nerves.
Absolutely.
England held their nerves despite that six. When the momentum seemed to have swayed towards New Zealand, England came back, and Archer, he maintained. So there was a wide ball, which was which had some nervous moments. But despite that wide ball, last ball, 2 runs needed. They couldn't score 2. New Zealand couldn't score 2.
Yeah, but in fact, they had to go for that second run, even if it wasn't there, because going by the what England had achieved in the league stage, they were ahead. They finished ahead of New Zealand after the league stage. They were third in that points table, and by that logic, they have won this. Won this final. And imagine both the teams after regulation time, after 100 overs, they were logged at 241. Even after super over, they both were logged at the same score. And England goes through, in fact, wins their first ever World Cup final. In fact, since 1992, this was the first time they made it to the final. To the final, and this time, we've been saying, in fact, last year.
They had the momentum. I mean, there were hiccups in between, but England had the momentum. Even when they defeated India, that's the time when everyone realized that, okay, this is the team that's the strongest.
Absolutely. In fact, if you see this this match, and if you compare this with the semi-final that New Zealand played against India, this script was very much similar. It was just that India could not chase that target down.
Yes.
New Zealand had set India a target of 240. Here, the target was 242. England also had a very bad start, but Ben Stokes and Joss Buttler, perhaps they'll remember these innings for the rest of their lives. And Ben Stokes, he took that risk, went for a double in the last of the last delivery.
Yes,
it had to take that chance, and they'll remember this match, this innings for the rest of their life. And also for the English, England, it's an epic day of as far as sports is concerned. Right in London, you had the British Grand Prix.
Yes.
You had Wimbledon final, which an epic final, a marathon fifth set between Federer and Djokovic, which Djokovic won, and now to cap that off, a World Cup victory for England. Last year, England, I remember at the FIFA World Cup, everybody was saying that World Cup is coming home, World Cup is coming home. Unfortunately, that didn't come. But yes, a World Cup has come home as far as England is concerned. I think they were one of the strongest teams, and they've proved why they were being tipped to win this World Cup. Eoin Morgan, their captain, I thought personally, two of the best captains in this World Cup were there in the final. Kane Williamson and next to him Eoin Morgan, and eventually, as you mentioned, the team which held its nerves better won this World Cup final.
Okay, but when we take a look at both the teams, rather evenly poised till the end. Absolutely. Both held their nerves. It's just that perhaps luck favored the brave or luck favored the home team.
And Gaurav, also, if you remember that, what was the turning point or a very crucial, at a very crucial stage, Ben Stokes went for a double. What happened thereafter was that the outfielder threw the ball and it struck Ben Stokes' bat, and it went for a boundaries. Those 6 runs, I think, were very, very critical at that particular stage, and that changed the the entire complexion of that match. And eventually, despite the fact that New Zealand will still say that the scores were level at both the stages after the regulation time and even after super over, but it had to be a team which had played consistently throughout this tournament, which will hold that trophy aloft at the Lord's balcony.
They deserve to win.
Absolutely.
England deserve to win this World Cup.
Absolutely. They won against the defending champions Australia in the semi-finals. They defeated India.
Seen as one of the strongest teams in this World Cup.
Which was being considered as one of the strongest contenders for this World Cup. and they had a few hiccups, a journey perhaps very similar to what Australia had in 1999. They also were in a situation like this where they had to win all their matches to sail into the semis. They went through a very bad phase during that tournament in the round robin league stage, and eventually they won that World Cup in 1999. And a very similar journey as far as the English team is concerned. They were in a situation where they needed to win those matches, and credit also has to go to Eoin Morgan, an Irishman, by the way.
Yes.
An Irishman is their captain, and
So Eoin Morgan, Ben Stokes, I mean, when you look at the people who got England this victory,
absolutely,
this fascinating victory, these are the men who will actually hold their head really high tonight.
Absolutely. And Eoin Morgan has to be given credit how he's shaped this team, because it was in a very bad stage, this England team, when Eoin Morgan took over the reins, and he had to make some difficult choices. He got rid of some of the senior players. He said, I want to play a different brand of cricket. This was around a couple of years ago, and today they have one of the most perhaps the ferocious batting lineup. If you see right from the top, it wasn't their day. 241, I think. Anybody, an English team, if given a choice, if they're given that in a final against New Zealand, you're given a target of 241, I think they would take. But the pressure of a final is something very different that we saw today, when England came out to chase that target. And had it not been that 110 run partnership between Ben Stokes and Joss Buttler, perhaps Joss Buttler had a relatively quiet World Cup, but when it mattered the most in the final, in the summit clash, he made it happen. He made that happen, and what a victory for England, perhaps.
So, and many would argue that England won the World Cup, but the Kiwis won hearts.
Yeah, that's what they always say. If you remember, 2015 also, New Zealand were the finalists, but it's often said that good men never finish.
They come last. We do see a lot of tearful faces there in the New Zealand team at this point of time, because they fought till the end. They almost won. They tied the World Cup, and this has been the most fascinating World Cup final perhaps ever.
Absolutely.
When they were tied up, they went into a super over, and off the super over, it's in the last ball that England's victory came.
Absolutely. 75 World Cup 1975 was a close one, but how many of us would remember that final? There are no footages. Perhaps we've not seen a lot of visuals, but this by far is the greatest World Cup final that we've seen. 4 years is a long time. New Zealand would have waited, India would have waited, so many teams would have waited, but eventually to hold that crown, it will be Eoin Morgan and his team who will lift that title. Since 2011, if you've been noticing, 2011 India were the host, by the way.
Yes.
They won that title. 2011 Australia were the host.
Yes.
They won that title. England are the host this time.
So what's the connection? Is this just luck? Is this just karma? You hold a good thing and you win?
Maybe you know the conditions better. Just for the record, 2023 India is hosting the World Cup. So we didn't manage to win this World Cup this time, but who knows? Who knows?
I'll let you go at that very, very positive thought. 2023, we host the World Cup. We know conditions better. We, of course, are perhaps one of the best teams in the world. Will we emerge the best in 2023? We'll wait and watch. But for tonight, the party is at the Lords in the United Kingdom. Perhaps the whole of England will be celebrating, but New Zealand too has reason to cheer.
Just to correct one more thing, after the scores were tied in the super over, England, by virtue of having scored more boundaries, was the reason perhaps for giving them or awarding them the World Cup title.
Okay, and let that be the last word on the show. 2023, the World Cup comes to India. Hosts it. Will the World Cup come to India?
Thanks for watching the video. For more such news and updates, please like, share and subscribe to India Today. Also check out our other great videos from our channel. We know you will love to.